What's good, lads, ladies, and non-binary folk? My name is Chance Carter, and welcome to Shared Screens. This is our weekly recap and a review of HBO's The Last of Us. This is for episode 7. What is the episode titled? Jordan, do you remember? Is it Left Behind? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
it's just Left Behind.
Awesome. Welcome. We are going to give you some spoiler-free thoughts right off the top of our head before we dive into the spoiler conversation. Joining me today, we have Jordan Deeb. Jordan, what did you think of this week's episode, and how are you doing?
So this is a section that I've only played through once. I played through it finally with the remake this past year. Overall, I think they nailed it. I am so fucking upset right now, even though I was like, I know exactly what's about to happen. I feel bad for everyone else that didn't and turned this on today. And I think that they made some interesting small changes with with what Ellie does and doesn't know to leave it spoiler free. Yeah.
I also am right there with you. I thought that their adaptation this week was especially spicy. Loved it. Also joining us is Liaren Jass. Liaren, what did you think of this week's episode, and how are you doing since last week? We didn't really get a whole lot of you last week. Glad to have you on in all of the 1080p high definition glory
We're
that
back.
you deserve. Yeah, we're back, baby.
Thanks.
What did you think of this week's episode?
It was cute. I liked it. It was pure. It was
Nice.
very sweet.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy the needle going through his skin, but beyond that, we were fine.
That definitely got some cringes at my place while we were watching this evening. Also, stay tuned for Liaren's parents' little summary review of this week's episode. Very, very nice little thing that we get. A little sprinkling on top of the episodes. Last but not least, joining us this week, we have Brett, aka Jim Tasty. Jim Tasty, how are you this week? What did you think of this week's episode?
Does anybody know what the 4th best-selling arcade game of all time is?
Is it
by
Mortal
chance?
Kombat?
I'm guessing it's Donkey Kong.
Yes.
I actually would have thought Donkey Kong
Interesting.
would have been higher. Not gonna lie.
You thought what would have
Yeah,
been
it was-
higher?
I would have thought Donkey Kong would have been higher than 4th. Not gonna lie.
I think
Based on my 5 minutes of research, it was number 4. So it was like Pac-Man, Space
Oh, yeah, that's
Invaders,
true.
and then
Fucking
like
Pac-Man.
something else. Yeah.
For those of you not in the know, The Last of Us is a PlayStation IP, and in the arcade this week, there was a lack of anything that could degrade the PlayStation IP. I'll put it that way. Alrighty, so that is our spoiler-free impressions. We are about to jump into the spoiler section of this episode. We will not go into anything future spoiler territory. We're just going to talk about what happened up until this point in the game and in the show. We will talk future spoilers, but that's going to be later in the show, so don't worry about that. We'll make sure to let you know before that happens. So jumping right into it, do we have any spoiler specific thoughts before we jump into the plot recap? My initial impression is that the actress playing Riley really played well off of Bella Ramsey, and this is about as perfect I could have ever hoped for a Left Behind adaptation being. Like, this really encapsulated it. Not to get too far ahead, but when she says be all poetic and shit and lose our minds together, immediately broke me, started crying right there. Like, that is something from last week I was sad that we didn't get, but having it in this episode instead really hit well, and I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. Is there anything the panel has that they thought was especially great this episode?
I was excited to see Stormy Reed or Storm Reed, I don't know if it's Stormy or Storm, do more than just stand in the background while Zendaya throws things. Because if
And
anybody
gets high.
watches Euphoria,
Yeah.
get high. Because I feel like for both seasons of Euphoria, everybody was like, "Can we get a storyline with her?" Because like she's just kind of in the doorway, and it was nice to see her really be able to like
It was almost
do
like
something.
Yeah, it was almost watching like two very talented young individuals just kind of act circles around each other, because they both come from previous HBO series. They both are pretty established actors, and just kind of getting to see them like really get in the Duffy of their acting craft was pretty. I mean, it was at my detriment, made me cry, but it was really cool to watch.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Jordan, did you have anything to add, or Brett?
I really liked that they kept the art of not showing us what happens with Ellie and Riley like they do in the game. There was a part of me when I was turning on the episode that was like, I'm not ready to see this. And I thought that maybe because of the type of adaptation they're doing, maybe they felt like they have to show it. But I'm glad that they kind of stuck with the, hey, it's going to be worse in your head. So we're going to leave that up to you as to how that all ends between them.
So Liaren has an interesting theory that we'll get into later this episode about why they cut where they cut. But also she hasn't played the game. So me and you thinking similarly, I'm like, that's where it ends in the game. But I can't wait for Liaren to divulge that. Anything, Brett, you wanted to kind of share? Are you ready to get into the plot?
Yeah, I just kind of like to tap into what you were saying, just like because they talk about in like the developer diary, like, just like holding on to those moments and, way different circumstances, but like when you were a kid and you only got to play like an hour of video games a day or whatever, and you were just like spending that like last 15 minutes and enjoying it as much as you could, like it felt like the world, so
playing Metroid Prime 2, trying to get to that save point in Metroid Prime Echoes, getting there, and you got 15 seconds left. Your mom's timing you.
Dude, you're in the dark world, and the Ing are jumping at you, man. Yeah.
Just
it's tough.
Fucking your day up. You got to spend every moment you can together, whether it's in a zombie apocalypse or gaming. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting into the plot recap. So this week we start off, and I will say, kind of miss not having the flashbacks to start each episode. I was really digging that the first few episodes, how they kind of had precursor things in the episode. I realize we kind of don't need them this late in the show. Just a side thought. So we start in, I would assume, somewhere in Colorado/Utah. Kind of looks like a residential area, pretty beaten up. And we see a bloody trail kind of going up to a house. Inside of the house, of course, is Ellie. She's frantic. The horse is in the garage. Go ahead, Liaren.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if any of you guys watch with subtitles. I watch everything with subtitles because I'm deaf. But when the horse, it's just showing the horse in the garage shaking the snow off his head. The subtitles are just Joel screaming in the distance. It was my favorite thing. It's just...
They're almost as good as the Stranger. Like, I feel like peak subtitles is Stranger Things subtitles, like with squelches.
Oh my gosh.
Like, ferociously and stuff.
See, I don't know if anything is ever going to beat the Breaking Bad subtitle of just go-karts, sadly.
Yeah.
I don't think anything will, that's for sure. Alrighty, so Ellie is trying to save Joel. Joel tells Ellie to go back to Tommy's house. Leave, please. He thinks he's goner. He's done for. He wants her to be safe. He knows that she'll be safe at Tommy's. She's obviously not willing to leave him for dead, and she goes to leave. And in a moment, she stops as she's about to hit the door, and that's kind of the start of the flashback as she goes through the door. We flash back to her in Boston. We assume maybe... me knowing from the games, this is about a month before she meets Joel. This all takes place. So about a month before the series kind of jumps ahead into 20 years later. So she's going through school, starting to get bullied because she's listening to her Walkman, and she starts a fight with this Abby-looking bitch that Brett pointed out before. I really would like that if she was Abby, but I think it's...
Bro, they just dunked on my theory like immediately, dude. I was like...
Yeah, like 3 seconds into screen time, they were like, Bethany.
Maybe she changed her name.
Yeah.
So hold on.
Her name's Abatha Bethany Harkness or something.
Oh my God.
So she sent Bethany to the infirmary with 14 stitches. The what was it? Captain Huang, I think was his name. You got two choices ahead of you. You got the mug or the keys. The mug is you're a grunt and you're a piece of shit. As a former enlisted, everything he said was exactly right. Or you can be an officer and live a cushy life and kind of control Bethany. And she obviously chooses the keys. We flash forward to her room. Go ahead, Brett. Did you have something to say?
Oh, I was gonna say weird, like metaphor, like
the keys.
The mug.
Yeah,
the
I
mug
didn't
is
understand.
like you're a dum like
although
low ball life person. Like I was like, what?
You're drinking coffee or you're driving. Also, there was a Naughty Dog logo on the keychain. I really liked that.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. The keys I figured were kind of like the keys to the place.
The keys to the city versus like, I don't know.
I don't know what the mug's supposed to represent.
I'm curious.
I feel like there were better metaphors.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, and maybe like they'll never really get into it, and because it feels like the Boston QZ is like better than most,
Yeah.
but like we never see any outright like acts of abuse by anybody in Fedra, and so
I mean, they
like,
publicly hang people.
Yeah, but I mean, like
well,
they're
we
not
don't know what
raping
they.
their constituents
Yeah,
like they are in like
No, in the beginning,
Kansas
it's just
City.
they left the QZ to find food in Boston.
Yeah, but I'm saying like in the Kansas City QZ, like they were like actively assaulting
yeah,
them physically and sexually, and like
yeah.
they
I misunderstood what we were talking about. I'm
yeah.
so sorry.
So
Continue.
so the Fedra in Boston theoretically is better than most. Go ahead, Brett. Sorry, I didn't.
Like this is not the focus of the show, but I'm like so curious about like the dynamics of like the politics and that, and like I mean all the QZs, but that one Boston obviously because we like get a reference, and so I'm like,
I feel like since
like
Joel
is it really bad, or is she just pissed that like she took an aptitude test and got like an F or whatever, and so they're like, all right, here you go, you're the janitor.
real quick to answer Brett's question, I do feel like it's just like teenagers hating where they're at, and I feel like Joel being in Boston when Tommy's on the other side of the country really lends itself to Boston being one of the better ones, because he like seems to be dialed in because he knows that Kansas City QZ is a piece of shit and not go there. So like I feel like Joel is a good barometer of like Boston QZ maybe has like looser standards, isn't as nice, but they're not like actively fucking their people up. Leanne, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
I have a question that nobody may have an answer to. I'm just curious. I don't fully understand how military governments work. Who is at like the top of the Boston QZ? Is there some other Fedra person that he also reports to that like somebody from like Atlanta also report like a
Theoretically,
top
yes.
guy?
Yeah.
Theoretically, it would be like a 1-star general is running Fedric, like the Boston QZ, and then like a 4-star general is running everything. So then there's like a 2-star general in charge of like the Northeast, another 2-star in charge of like the Southeast, so on and so forth. That's
Okay.
in my mind, with my knowledge, that's how it would run.
Based on like the technology available to like these folks is like they can communicate long distance, so I would assume
Yeah, because Atlanta is where they're getting pills and batteries from. So they're
Yeah,
like
that was
working
my-
together. Yeah.
Because I was like going through this with last week's episode of like at first I was like, how the fuck are there all these medical supplies there? And I was like, no, I mean, I guess if it's a military government, they still have factories producing
They're just
crap.
producing like the essentials.
the essentials, which totally makes sense. Like I fully understand that
They're-
they're not also like, let's have a toy factory. Like
I think
I
that
get
they
it.
like
I
tried
just
to
didn't.
lay the foundation of that in previous episodes when they were saying like, oh, things like batteries and pills come from Atlanta. Maybe the medicine like other medicines come from like Texas or something.
Yeah.
yeah.
And-
Yeah, I was wondering like if it's like Fallout 3 where like the Enclave is like the remnants of the government, but they're like just keeping to themselves unless they need to go somewhere and like take charge. So it's like loosey goosey. I don't know.
I feel like that's how the QZs are operating, where like they don't go outside of the QZ unless they have to. So it's just kind of like these islands throughout the country of like people who are safe. Getting back on topic, so getting back to the plot. We have this weird analogy, and then Ellie is in her room. It's lights out. She goes to sleep. There's an empty bed across the room. We obviously know this is Riley's. Those of us who know the game love that you're drinking Dutch Bros. Double torture is my drink.
Let's go, dude.
Hell yeah, baby. Riley breaks in, wakes Ellie up, and like the least cool way. We're living in an apocalypse. Like there's a 10 out of 10 chance that you wake me up this way. I'm gonna try to stab you in the temple.
She prison jumped somebody earlier. Why? I get that Riley doesn't know that, but like, come on.
Yeah, like,
Like-
the girl ain't
Not the
fucking
move.
around. Yeah, not the move at all. So then Riley says she had met a firefly when she had been, or maybe this isn't right now.
He says
No.
a random firefly at first, and then she starts talking about specifics way later on.
Okay, that's right. So she has been gone for 2 weeks. She had joined the Fireflies. She asks Ellie to leave for a few hours. They leave out the window. Ellie is kind of getting scolded by Riley about being too violent, which I find interesting because it seems like Riley was the violent one before she left. So she's like, I went to summer school and now I'm so much more mature than you. It just is very interesting to me. They make it to the 7th floor of this building and find a dead man who makes pills and booze and any college age party will tell you that that is not the thing to do, Chief. And, he faced dire consequences. But the plus side is that Ellie and Riley now have a bottle of Pendleton whiskey to sip on the rest of the night.
I'm sorry, him falling through the floor was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah, just like the best way to get rid of a body. Just like, thunk, like.
It was so funny. And like Riley looks at Ellie like, why are you laughing? I'm like, no, bitch, that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like,
we'd all be laughing. Also,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
an
just hear
easy
the
way to
body
get the pills
thunk
out of
on
the situation. Like, we don't have to worry about them taking the pills. They ran away.
ooh.
Yeah.
So then they start drinking the whiskey. Ellie asks what happened, and Riley starts to tell her like, "Oh, I had snuck out because you were in lockup. You were in the hole, I believe is what she said. And I was sneaking around the guards, and this one creepy 40 or 50-year-old lady was like, 'Yo, girl, you got the stuff,' and she asked me to join the Fireflies on the spot." So I think that's like a really nice way to put it. Pretty interesting. I also feel like Riley is kind of like tooting her own horn a little bit. Maybe Marlene had to bail her out of some sticky shit. I digest. They run across the rooftops, make it to the mall, and they kind of start arguing about Fedra versus the Fireflies and why one's better than the other. And it's very interesting to see these two friends that like obviously have slightly different ideology, but like don't know quite how to like argue the stuff out. And like
It's like listening to 12-year-old boys that have only ever heard their dad talk about politics
or
try
it's
to
like
have those
all of our parents
conversations.
trying to have conversations after only reading Facebook articles. Like if I'm being
Yeah.
like that is exactly how it read to me. It's like, oh,
I'd
you're
argue that-
every fucking boomer I know.
Yeah.
And like for them, I'll give them the pass of they're children. Like that's how children retain. If an adult human tells a child this is how the world works, they're gonna believe that adult.
Yeah.
Like,
And they're like 14, right? Anyway.
yeah, she's 17 and
Yeah, you're
Ellie's like 14.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also almost felt like, at least from Ellie's perspective, of like, well, no, maybe Fedra isn't the worst. Of like, as much as she hates being in a military school, she feels safe with Fedra. It's where she's always been. So like,
Yeah,
she
like she's
probably,
alive.
yeah, and she probably finds a weird sense of comfort within Fedra. And
It's kind of like Lord Farquaad and Duloc, right? Like all the citizens are doing great,
Please
but
let me find out where this is fucking going. Sorry. Go ahead, Brett. God
Go,
damn
go.
it.
I need to hear this.
all the citizens are doing great, right? All the humans. It's a perfect place, but at what cost? At what cost?
Okay, I get where you okay.
Brett's just
Leerin's
comparing The
face
Last
just
of Us.
down in the corner.
No, Brett's using the best political metaphor of our generation, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Lord
Yeah,
Farquaad.
And then with Riley, it also seems like a sense of comfort of she's being told what she wants to hear. She doesn't want to hear that she's somebody who's only going to live up to, sanitation worker. She wants to hear, hey, you've got a fight in you. Like we're going to do something here and we're going to change the world. And it's like, realistically, there's probably benefits to Fedra and there's probably benefits to the Fireflies and there's also negatives to each of them. And they both seem to be a little trigger happy, which sucks.
Yeah.
So, speaking of trigger happy, here's an issue I take with the Fireflies in this episode is the story that Riley gives us for how she became one of the Fireflies and that they were basically like, do you believe that Fedra are fascists and want to like take them down? And she was like, yes. And then she was in. I looked at my mom and I was like, that was all they took to hand a 17-year-old a gun. Like they heard, yes, I think Fedra is fascist, and they went, here's a weapon.
Speaking
It's
of
kind of like
personal
when they used to.
experience, they require a lot less to join the United States military.
Oh no,
Like,
that's kind of what my dad said.
I was gonna say
know.
it's kind of like drafting, like before we had a lot of technology, like during the first couple World Wars. They're like, hey,
a bingo wheel.
yeah, they're like, hey,
bad. See, okay, here's a rifle. Get out
popper,
of here.
yeah.
the guy wearing that, you go shooty at him, you come back, hopefully you still got all limbs.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's why we have so many, like, a lot of those people that were sent over in the draft then are, like, assassinated presidents because they learned, well, not a lot of people, bad people who got put in the army
All right,
because of the draft.
let's not make this about JFK right now. All right, so continuing on, they make it across the rooftops. They enter the mall. Riley is like, go out that door, take a left, go out that door, tell me when you get there. And she's like, okay, maybe it was different directions. They're arguing, and this is the moment where you can kind of see like nobody can boss Ellie around except for Riley. Like Riley's like the one person to the key with the key to the city. So she gets her to go out there, flips on the mall lights, and it's a sight to behold. Let me tell you what, second coming of Jesus Christ. She surprises her with the lights, and then she's like, oh, there's the 4 wonders of the mall, and they go down the escalators, which ensues this really cute scene. And she's like, is this one of the wonders? And she's like, yeah, I guess we can make it 5. And I just love everything from here to when we see the walker, or not the walker, the fucking runner clicker dude at the wall. Go ahead, Brett.
I still get a little excited every time I go down or up an escalator, and especially when I'm at an airport and it's the horizontal ones.
Yo, those horizontal
and your
speedways?
speed running.
Yeah,
Those are real life's version of the little patches in Mario Kart that give you a boost.
100%.
It's important for me to add into this conversation. I'm fucking terrified of escalators. I will go on them, but as a kid, I had a reoccurring nightmare about my feet getting ripped off at the bottom of one, and now I'm like really freaked out by that.
Are you like Elf, where you do this? You're doing the splits.
So
I just get very. I like jump on the escalator. Like I go to the here's the platform where you stand and the stair starts. I like jump to the 3rd. And I get off it as fast as physically possible.
So my sister,
I've seen it.
when she was in high school in like 2002, had her shoes untied and they got stuck in the escalator and they like ripped them off of her foot.
Yeah, that's why it freaks me out. And I just used to have this reoccurring nightmare about it happening at the Poughkeepsie Galleria. And like
everybody who's trying to bring Crocs back, this is your warning right now with the escalators. Be careful.
Do the escalators eat Crocs?
Yeah, because the flappy loose like material, dude, can get caught in the wedge.
Just another reason not to wear Crocs.
Foot gone. Exactly.
But if you got to wear them in 4-wheel drive mode and they won't come off your ankle.
Okay.
I don't know what else you call it. Yeah, sport mode. I guess that I've only ever heard of it referred to like that.
Something tonight, guys. Like Jesus Christ.
See, the escalator thing. One, anytime I see somebody going opposite on an escalator, the only thing that pops to mind is the kid from the Jimmy Neutron movie when the parents disappear going, I'm running up the down escalator. Has been for 20 years, will never change. The other thing this reminded me of is, and I hope this doesn't bring the mood down too much, but like Ellie just being so amazed at an escalator, like you hear about people that have been imprisoned, whether it's like prisoners of war or they just, they got a really shitty sentence in the legal system. And like they come out after like 30 years and like they've never seen an automatic door before. Like it was the same type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very wholesome, and the fact that they were a little drunk made it even more fun. We do get the moment of her tripping onto Riley, and she's kind of there a little bit longer and is looking at her all cutesy wootsy like.
Gay panic.
Yep. 100%.
This entire section of episode is gay panic.
100%. So then after the trip, they make it down, and another gay panic scene is they see the Victoria's Secret store, and she's like, oh, I was just thinking of you in that. And we're all just like, oh, were you? Is that how you're going to break this ice right now? Like, we're all witnessing horrible teenage game, and it's perfect. She's really filling it out, and there's this cute scene. She then tells her, all right, close your eyes. And it's very clear at this moment that, like, Riley has kind of set this whole thing up for Ellie. And they make it around the corner. It's a carousel. They have another cute moment where they're drinking and kind of enjoying each other's company. And then there's, like, a really melancholy moment. And then, lost in my notes. Drunk, melancholy. Is this where we pan over to the infected, or is that in the?
That was in the arcade.
That's in the arcade. Okay, so then, on the carousel is when she kind of tells her why she left, and that it was because she had gotten the sewage detail, correct? And that's kind of like it spurs that conversation. Then she's like, "All right, it's on to the next wonder, which is the photo booth." Liren, go ahead. I thought you had.
I was just agreeing with you. No, sorry, I was itching my arm.
So then they get into the photo booth, and let me tell you what, there was one or two of these poses that they hold that they had to have watched that scene from The Last of Us Left Behind like 3 or 4 times to get right, because like the scary pose was like there was just a couple of them that did my heart. Like I audibly was like, my heart.
I like that they also did one of each, because I know like in the game, like you have to just choose in the beginning like what kind of vibe you want for the photos, and then they'll just play the cutscene. So I like that they did one of each.
Yeah, it was really well. I do also like, I forgot to mention that in Ellie's room, when we are back at the Fedra orphanage, we get a ton of Easter egg kind of shout outs with Savage Starlight and different kind of collectibles that you have in the game, and I really appreciated that little touch. So they have this nice moment flirting at the photo booth. Riley leans too hard on Ellie, and Ellie's like, okay, what's going on? And then they make it to the arcade. And once you start hearing the arcade sounds, my mind, like, this is my favorite part of the DLC, is the arcade scene, that and the Halloween scene, which I do like how they kind of switched the rotation of all these. But they make it to the arcade, and Ellie says that it is the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. She earlier, when they're at the photo booth, Riley has a $5 bill, and I was like, where the fuck did you get this $5 bill? And then she's like, they're going through the arcades, they see Mortal Kombat 2. All of us nerds are like, fuck yeah, the game that we wanted to be in the game. And she's like, oh well, we need coins, and she turns around and there's all these dollar bills on the ground. I just love all of this scene. And then she's like, "But no, that's worthless. We need the coins." And just like the baddest of asses, Riley just like kicks open the fucking coin machine, and all these quarters start flying out.
A modern day Fonzie.
Dude, 100%. And she's like, I spent an hour yesterday breaking that bitch open. Loved it. So they start to play, and Riley gets the first fatality, and it's a really fun scene of her trying to explain how to play. Really liked this as opposed to in the game where it's just imagination based. I think in the game it makes sense. They can kind of make it tailor-made to the mechanics, but having it be in this medium, it just really lended itself to having Mortal Kombat actually be up and running. I don't know if you guys felt this a similar way, Brett.
I have something to bring up here. Okay.
This is what I fucking.
Now, I'm not a Mortal Kombat expert. All right. Again, no Donkey Kong, no Marvel vs. Capcom. Come on. Spider-Man. Come on.
No, it's 2003.
Marvel vs. Capcom 2, bro.
Okay. Fine.
2001 or something like that.
I don't know what this came out.
But to my knowledge, with Mortal Kombat fatalities, it's like a pretty like intricate like set of inputs. Like you can't really button mash those like fatalities, right? So,
well, I think she says like the actual fatality button mapping. Like when she's explaining it to Ellie, she's like back, down, forward, back, red is like how she tells her to do it.
Okay, yeah. Like, are those like on the cabinet or whatever, or like what I'm getting at is how much did Riley play before she figured out how to do the fatality for the man-eater lady?
Well,
Melina.
I'm so stoked that out of all of us fucking nerds, Lee Aaron was the one that knew it was Melina.
Yeah.
Well, me and my parents had a very interesting conversation about Mortal Kombat, because this is how I learned. My parents have never heard of Mortal Kombat before.
Really?
Throughout the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s. What were you saying, Jordan?
Oh my God, Chance, if you asked them about it, they had no idea that happened until recently. I was like, where were you? And they were like, in college. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
I wish your parents hung out with my parents. God damn, satanic panic was a thing.
So Neil Druckmann at the like little documentary they do at the end talked about how like they've always been so interested in the game that they never got to play, and says that they probably read the controls in like a video game magazine they just found lying about, because what else do you have to do? And I also figured, yeah, Riley definitely played it and had a chance. Chance, you were talking about before, like, is it better that the machine was on and they actually got to play, or what it left behind, the actual game where it's like broken, and so she like, I feel like them playing is better, but at the same time, I love the scene of Riley putting her hands over Ellie's eyes and like visualizing, like describing the game like moment by moment. And like, I would have loved if there was like somehow we could have gotten both, if maybe like the machine broke down halfway through.
Yeah.
Also, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, February 24th, 2000.
Oh, so it definitely should have been in that arcade. I rescind my previous statement. I guess my kind of rebuttal to that is like I do appreciate that we've gotten both, because I do think if we had gotten the show first, we would never question well, what if the game didn't work? And I am glad that having the game where it doesn't work, we know, and it's kind of, we get different but the same kind of situations out of it. I guess the thing, like the moment where she puts her hand over Ellie's eyes, and it is very like a very endearing and kind of like bonding moment for the two of them, I think is mirrored perfectly in seeing them have the camaraderie of like actually playing the game with each other. And I think something can be said for both, but I just really, we have so
somebody
many
who is-
bad adaptations, and this is just handling it so much better than anybody
No,
else.
I
fucking
feel
love
that,
it.
yeah.
Sorry. Elliot.
As somebody who has never watched the DLC, had no idea what was involved besides the very end. I can say I would have been bored as fuck if I had to watch her for 4 minutes just talk through a Mortal Kombat game. It's one of those things where I'm not saying it's bad in the game. I'm sure it makes sense in the game. It's one of those things that does not transfer over well to television.
And the other thing the game does, which it wouldn't have transferred here, is like they show you basically Ellie's imagination by like putting the fight over the cutscene.
Yeah. And also, I
Yeah.
think that they needed the sound to be able to have like the reason for the semi clicker to be able to hear them.
Yeah, and like I think the reason this is such a good video game adaptation is because rather than just going, okay, we're adapting a story that's already been written before, they like sat down and were like, okay, this will not transfer well. This won't transfer well. This has to be sped up. And so like it just works better. Like thought was put into it is basically what I'm saying.
I do want to shout out the HBO weekly podcast that Liaren has shouted out, and is actually the one that turned me on to this podcast that is helmed by Craig. What is his last name?
Mason?
Mason,
yeah.
Neil Druckmann and Troy Baker. They go into weekly kind of deep dives from the creators of the show, and it is superb. Very, very good stuff. Highly recommend listening to it. So we get the kind of pan over as the clicker wakes up. Ellie wins.
Wait, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
So sorry because none of you guys will have picked up on this because you're all men. But making this man have to spend eternity turning into a fungus monster in a fucking American Girl doll store is the funniest shit I have ever seen in my life. It pans in and I was like, I know that fucking red box. I know what this is. And it's
Picked up on it, actually.
What?
I picked up on the fact that it's American Girl.
Well, you have 3 sisters, so like that
I
might
had
you
no
may
idea, and I have like 5 sisters. That is hilarious.
It's the American Girl doll store, which is hell on earth. As somebody who loved American Girl dolls as a kid, applied to write for Mattel for American Girl dolls years ago. Hell on earth. The store is awful. I feel for this man just being stuck to a wall, turning into a fungus killing machine.
Nobody got it worse than that guy. Nobody
The
in the
fucking
entirety.
Kittredge 1920 depression doll is just like emptily staring at him as he turns into a mushroom. Like,
It would've been-
Jesus Christ.
Imagine if it was just that like this dude was living in the mall and like he wasn't bitten, but just being in the American Girl doll store turned him into like a fucking maniac.
Just did that to him.
He's just some guy.
Well, in the DLC, there is just a homie that lives in the mall that ended up dying, but it just like that's the nod to him we get is he's just gone lunatic in the mall. So Ellie and Riley almost kiss, and she's like, well, what is this all about? And she's like, well, I kind of came here to say goodbye. And she's like, all right, you said it. And they kind of have a spat. Ellie barges off, sheds one single tear, turns around, goes back to she hears screaming, right? Oh no! Runs back to a Halloween store. This little bitch, Riley, has set up one of these Halloween things, and we all thought it was her. What a little shit. Why would you pull our legs like that, Riley? I thought you loved us. Riley got her a gift. She takes her back. No, wait. I missed this up.
She gets the gift with they go into the kitchen in the food court and Riley
That's right.
Ellie finds the bombs.
That's right. So that is what. So kind of. She takes her to her camp where she's been saying. She gives her the gift book. She sees the bomb. She then storms off. Comes back. Everything I just said about the Halloween store. It's the fifth wonder. She said that she was saving it for last because she thought that Ellie would love it the most. Ellie kind of lays it all out, and they, they kind of have this back and forth, and Riley's like, well, maybe you don't know everything. And they just kind of make amends in this moment, and it's really sweet. And one last thing, says Riley, and she pulls out these masks, and just the most like video game accurate fucking dumb ass werewolf mask I have ever seen. And the music comes on, and it's from Ellies. Oh, I forgot to mention, like I live off of 80s music. Like that is, I listen to 80s music and The Weeknd, and like that is all. And so when Aha Take On Me starts playing as they're going down the escalator, just chef's kiss. We see that she's listening to Aha the whole time. I forget the song that plays at this moment, but Riley had stolen her.
Oh, it's Etta James. It's
I should know the song, but I forgot to.
Oh my god.
While she's thinking about that, she plugs it in. They start to dance on the counter, and beautiful scene, beautiful. It's not "Don't Wake Me Up Before You Go," right? No, that's
no, that's Wham. How dare you? How dare you not know Wham? I love Wham.
I'm not hating on any of these art. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind's my favorite ride, just because they have fucking. Everybody wants to rule on it. Anyway, I digest. They sing, they dance, they have a cute old time. At the end of it, Ellie pulls off her mask, is looking real sad, and she's like, "Don't go." And Riley says, "Okay," and they kiss, and it is just peace on earth, goodwill towards men. It's Christmas time, and these two just got their presents. As soon as they kind of like
get you, babe.
I got you, babe. That's okay. Okay. Thank you, Le'Aaron. It was I got
you, babe. It's Etta James. I got you, babe. All I could hear was "At Last," and that wasn't it. Whew. Okay, we're good.
I know that feeling, and I'm glad you found it. So, an infected attacks, gets at Ellie, gets at Riley. They team up, kind of try to take it out. Ellie stabs it in the temple, and then she realizes she's been bit on the forearm. And then Riley sees her hand. Now, Jordan, what did you think about it being one soul infected versus kind of the horde that we get in the video game?
It makes more sense for TV that it was one, because like, how do you expect the two of them with one gun to fight off a fucking horde of them? Like in the game, you got to keep it going, but in this, it makes perfect sense that it would have just been one, and that's what all it takes, and that's what fucking sucks.
Now, Brett, what did you think of it being so much quicker than in the game? Because it is kind of a drawn-out sequence in the game, and by the end of it, we're all kind of like, one of these two haven't made it out okay. Did you find it kind of added more to the suspense, or what did you think of this scene overall as opposed to the game?
Yeah, I thought it was a overall good adaptation. On one hand, it was like, oh, it's just one versus like the 100. But then you got to think about it like, okay, this mall is in the QZ, so it would make sense that there wouldn't be like a horde running around. Otherwise, that would be like really bad for every, Fedra and everybody living in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one gets away. That's fine. And I think the pace of it was great because it kept things going. I felt like they got to where they needed to get to emotionally. So I was okay with it.
Nice. Now, Le'Aaron, you said that you didn't know anything about this DLC. I'm sure, Brett, you said you have played this, correct? Left Behind?
Yeah, just once though.
So, I feel like we all kind of know the kiss happens, then the shoe drops. Le'Aaron, did you kind of see this other shoe dropping? Did you think it would happen this quick if you did see it going negatively? Because we also didn't get the foreshadowing of seeing the clickers waking up. So obviously you knew something was going to happen, but did you think it'd go badly this quickly?
Yeah, so I knew that they both end up getting bitten. That was like all I knew. I don't know why in my brain that morphed into Riley saving Ellie and getting like overwhelmed by a bunch of clickers.
I mean, in the final finality of the scene, it is a moment where like she boosts you up and then you pull her up and then like you've made it away from everybody. So in the game, it is a little bit more like you just barely made it out type feelings.
However, me and my parents, who know nothing about the DLC, all knew that something was going to go bad besides that one guy because they spend the entire episode setting up what I refer to, maybe not so lovingly, that Riley's a fucking moron and a child. Like,
Yeah.
and it's not a bad thing. Like, I'm not shitting on her for being a 16-year-old girl who doesn't understand how the world works. Like, that's fine. It's just, like, it made it kind of heartbreaking because, yeah, she didn't know a clicker was in there because she's not Joel. She didn't go through and sweep the entire area before being cool, like, camping out. She went in there because she didn't see any infected, you know, like, and so, yeah, like, it's one of those things where it's like, when somebody's that virtuous, they're usually gonna fucking bite it. Like, that's usually where the road we're on.
Yeah.
And she spends the entire episode like hyping up the Fireflies and what she did and all of this stuff to like she spends the entire time like trying to convince herself, thinking Ellie, but herself, that what everything she did was okay. And like she doesn't get it. Like Ellie says it, you're running off to join a cause. I don't think you understand.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think she does either. And it's like one of those things where you're like, well, I know Ellie's getting bit because I've seen it, and like this chick is definitely not surviving.
This chick is definitely not getting bit. So then we have the first just kind of hard cut, the end, I guess the second of the episode, back to Joel shaking in the basement as Ellie is playing the damn game. She's running through that house, fucking whipping open every cupboard. If her arm could have been back at a 90-degree angle backwards, flipping open things, I think it would have. I really felt like this was their moment of like, all right, you guys wanted to see somebody tearing through a house, raiding it as quick as you do. This is it. She finally finds a suture kit, which is a little more than a needle and some like thread for clothing, and goes down and starts to sew up Joel. We then cut back to the mall, and Ellie is completely losing it. She's breaking the glass counter with some sort of bat. Liren, go ahead.
Listen, it's a good way to deal with your anger. Like I can't, like she's processing it. We need to let her do it.
So as she's processing it one way, we get to see the dichotomy of the two as Riley is processing it the other way, and Solemn sitting, kind of taking it all in with a little bit more nuance, I'll say, or just in a different aspect. Riley kind of cheekily says, like, there's a counter over there I think you missed if you need something else to break, and Ellie plops down next to her, and she's like, what do we do? Riley lays it out. They got two options. They can take the quick and painless way out, which she's not a fan of, which is kind of just, unalive themselves right then and there and just get it over with, which, if I'm being honest, that's probably the route I would take, just because I know where this road leads, and I don't want to make my mistake somebody else's problem, and who knows how long. But she says, which is something that I think I needed to hear, and people who think like me need to hear, is, or there's option 2, where we keep going and we fight for every moment that we have together, because she knows what it's like to have a family, and Ellie doesn't, because she doesn't remember what her family was like. They were dead before she could remember it. But Riley remembers, and she says that whether it's 2 minutes or 2 days, we're going to fight for every moment. And we can go out all poetic and shit. I butchered the line. Beautiful line that I believe is in Ellie's speech from last week, and that is the one line I was really upset that they didn't keep. But having it in this moment felt so much more right for the moment, I feel. Just because hearing it from Riley as opposed to Ellie, I feel like is just a little bit more natural. Ellie asks Riley if there's an option 3, and she just starts sobbing as she says, I'm sorry. And we cut away. Ellie starts suturing up Joel, and the episode breaks. Now, before we started,
when the episode broke, my father audibly went, "Oh, come on!" And it was like, okay.
It did feel short. Yeah, I thought they were gonna.
It felt
maybe like
short.
a minute longer.
Yeah, it felt short, but for me, that is the perfect place to end this episode, is because this is in game speak. They took some things out of Ellie trying to forage and find things. She found things about people in a mall she was foraging for. This is the Left Behind DLC in a single episode, and just they keep fucking doing it, dude. Like, they took an entire DLC, maybe 6 or 7 hours long when you're playing it, trying to 100% it, and they shortened it into 45 perfect minutes. Like, having Neil on set with Craig Mazin, who understands and respects source material, we just couldn't ask for anything better. Like, this, to me, I think Frank and Bill's episode is a better episode, but I think adaptation-wise, this is as perfect as we're gonna as possible.
It's so hard to compare it
What's
to.
up, Brett? I see you laughing at me. What the fuck is up? You
I think
bitch.
it's
Dude, you're doing it because you're wearing a stupid Halo sweatshirt right now, and I'm thinking of Master Chief and that Covenant lady having sex, bro.
Wait,
I haven't even seen the Halo show, bitch.
Oh my gosh.
Just because he said it was a good adaptation, your brain went to Master
It's
Chief
because-
and that chick
It's
fucking.
because I'm a Sony pony and he's an X-bot in his fucking Microsoft show. He got his character fucking some alien chick that, like, you're not even
I
supposed
didn't
to
know.
see his
Okay.
face.
I heard we see Master Chief clapping cheeks in the Halo show. I was like, that's dumb. I thought he was fucking a human. He's fucking a
No,
Covenant.
he's
She's a human, but again, I only watched 2 episodes out of like 9 because
Here's the
was a
thing.
hard
To me,
out.
the Covenants are all like the Frieza looking motherfuckers. Like they're all
Hey, did you see Avatar: Way of Water?
no,
I
out of
did.
principle.
This Covenant lady is like the human dude that lives with the Nazi.
So she's just a blue human. Got it.
No,
yeah.
she's just a human living with the jackals, I'm assuming, or some dumb
Yeah.
shit. But that's why he's laughing, is because he didn't get a good adaptation.
You're like,
Bruh.
this is such a good ad, and I'm like, dude, I just
You didn't like seeing John Master Chief every week?
I'm so glad that we didn't get to see Joel clapping some clickers' cheeks episode 2. Thank God. Yeah. Live with that. Fucking
oh
lame.
my gosh.
But yeah, no.
I really
Chance-
want everybody to go back and watch that. Like, that was so surprising to me that while Brett and Jordan had visceral reactions, I didn't I just disassociated. I can't.
didn't register. Yeah.
Oh my lord. Oh, how would that even? Ooh.
We don't
Do you
want to
get-
get into
never
the
mind.
specifics.
We don't need to know. No.
Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, this isn't a media club where we can like get into the details about like Vision's penis. Like we're not worrying about that.
Tune into Media Club if you want to hear that.
That also
Yeah.
is me asking the question.
Chance, I'm with you on the like how good of an adaptation it is. I just wish we got the shot at the end of Joel on the mattress and Ellie laying next to him on a coat, and there's like that moment where she reaches out to him.
So there's always going to be those moments that they could
Yeah.
add, because now that you say that, that is the perfect moment to end this episode. Her finishing up, sewing him, and then cuddle. But I also feel like where we were at in the game, needing them to connect, like we needed that moment a lot more than we need it in the show, because we already know her feelings towards him and his feelings towards her were in the game. We weren't as connected. But with you saying that, I'm like, yeah, you could have taken it and it would have been an 11 if you had added that scene. Like, I'm not even going to lie. Like, that would have taken it way over the top for me.
It's just like if they went all out and they were like, hey, we should also adapt the Ellie in the mall in present time, and that whole thing, I was like, that would have taken them a whole fucking extra week of filming.
Yeah.
Get the camera guy on a ladder, have him go like this, like
Hey, we haven't really mentioned it yet. And they talked about it a little bit in the like director commentary or whatever. Like the set design for this episode was amazing, man. The set design for the whole show has been just 10 out of 10, and
What? I'm not saying nothing about Master Chief.
I'm just thinking
John
about, like,
117 getting his
I'm just
cheeks
thinking of
clapped.
like the cheap CGI, like that makes MODOK look like a work of art, bro. That's all I'm gonna say.
I was just hoping we'd see like a Circuit City or another business that like nobody even knows anymore.
Just like the kids who were alive in the early 2000s were Circuit City or like Radio Shack or some shit.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Circuit City.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, man, dude, I going into one when it was like shutting down and buying like DS stylus pens for like 30 of them for like $10, man. Oh man, that was a move.
when the big Circuit
Move.
City in our town closed, I went in and just bought a fuck ton of DS games for super cheap.
bought some DS pens and saw the game plan
I was like
with
super.
The Rock.
I was super.
2008.
I was super jock mode when Circuit City was closing. I just found out what lacrosse was, and let me tell you what, I was laxing it up, bro. All right, so any final thoughts before we head into future spoilers? Liren, are you gonna take off for future spoilers?
I am. So
Okay.
I also will give us, before we go into future spoilers, my parents' review. My father's only review was, "Aw, come on," and then he left the room and didn't return before I got off the phone. So I don't know what he did. My mom's were less well put together than, it's not one sentence, because she had kind of opinions on the future, like where we were with the stitching up the body, Ellie as a whole and Riley as a whole. My mom also did not love Riley because she felt like it was, Riley was kind of a moron. Like, she understood Riley's purpose and liked her for Riley's purpose and thought it was very pure, but beyond that wasn't like attached to Riley, which I don't think you need to be necessarily.
I think it's just
Then
the idea of Riley and understanding what she meant to Ellie that is
yeah.
important about her, and kind of like the path that she sets her on. Sorry, continue.
And so then we had a whole little conversation about like what it means to belong and being completely alone and all that crap. But that she was basically like, after this episode, Ellie fully makes sense to me. Like, this is where it clicked that she's gonna like, she feels like she's just gonna lose everybody and she's just gonna spend life alone. We had a whole conversation about attachment disorder, and that like Ellie doesn't have an adult that is a parent figure. Like, Joel is literally the first parent figure she's ever had at 14. And so like, yeah, her being a feral little monster is like totally makes sense.
Feral
And she's
kitten.
also very
Infamously put by one Lear and Jas, a feral kitten.
feral kitten. And she's excited to I don't remember anymore. And then the very last thing, yes. And then the very last thing was, metaphorically speaking about the entire episode, she felt that the entire episode was a metaphor that was summed up in the very final shot of Ellie giving Joel those stitches, where Ellie is literally just trying to hold her entire life together, while still being a child and not being necessarily emotionally equipped, and that like the entire episode is them coming together and being stitched together, and that bond like being finalized, like they are father and child now. Let's go.
Hell yeah. So any final thoughts for you before we head into future spoilers? I do appreciate your parents giving these spoiler or these reviews every week. I feel like your mom is a fucking sage, and like, even though that wasn't like her most quippiest review, it was still like very well thought out, and I love them every week. So keep them coming. I really love them.
I love talking to her about media. It's so much fun. Her opinions bring me such joy. But the very last thing is, my theory is I think we will see more of Riley next week. I have one of two theories now that we've done our full spoilers. I think we may see, just because they cast who they cast, and when she got cast, it was such a big deal that she had gotten cast as Riley. I think we may see her die. Either Ellie has to put a bullet in her, or just we see her die. If we don't see that, and in that, I could see that being where we start to explore Ellie's mom too. But if that's not where they go, then I think we'll just see Ellie's mom in the finale, and like them explore
I think
when we're back with the Fireflies.
I think we only see her in the finale, and I think there's a very specific moment when we see her. But that is future spoilers. I don't want to give you. So if you are like
I'll
Lear
leave you to it.
Yeah, so if you are like Lear and you have not played the game, you do not want the future spoiled, please dip out now. We will give you a good solid second. Thank you, Learen, for joining us this week. Where can people find you on the social medias?
You can find me on everything at Learen Jess. Or just go to Shared Screens and find me following there, because nobody knows how to spell my name.
It is a good one. Leigherin. I made it a point to figure out how to spell that as soon as we met, because I didn't want to be that asshole. All right. Thank you, Learen, and we'll catch you next time.
Have a good night, guys.
Alrighty. We are in the Treehouse of Trust. We are full spoilers. So, having said that, gentlemen, we're only getting Ellie's mom in that last episode, and it's going to be a flashback of Marlene thinking back on this whole kid's life before she makes the decision that
Yeah.
she has to kill her, right? Like that's in my mind, like when we see her mom.
Uh-huh.
I definitely think it's in that moment. I don't know if it's
Because we need a lot of
Marlene.
time to fill out Salt Lake because of that section mostly being combat.
Yeah. I don't know if it's gonna be like, oh, it's like a shot of just Marlene struggling with her own demons and having these flashbacks, or if it's like she's talking to Ellie. Because Ellie asked her in the pilot, she's like, how did you know my mom? And so maybe she starts giving that story. I don't know where Tim Geddes got this, but Tim Geddes said that the way that they might explain Ellie's immunity is, and I don't know if this is a leak or rumor, so if you guys don't want me to say it to not
That
like
her mom
spoil it.
got bit as she was being
Yeah.
I've often had this theory in my head that
Or her mom got bit while she was pregnant and like the fetus created an immunity, which is like,
so
I think a thing that could happen.
I took it as like as she was giving birth, like because like if you think about it, like her turning, like she only has 2 days like max of like her turning, so like she gets bit, goes into labor, Ellie is born. That's how, like, I've kind of had that theory. I do really like that theory now that you've brought it up. I haven't thought about it in a minute. So my thought is that when she is talking to Joel and explaining to him what is going to happen to Ellie, and so, also I've been like having this thing about not wanting to talk about Salt Lake. From here on out, we can talk about Salt Lake ad nauseum. I feel like we are late enough in this series that it's full spoilers and everything for that section. So when Marlene is talking to Joel explaining like this wasn't an easy decision, I think those are going to be things that like come up in that moment of like her remembering being there when Ellie's mom got bit and Ellie was born and all that shit. Just to kind of piggyback off of your idea and to kind of take it a step further. Sorry, I didn't mean to run you over.
No, you're good. I'm really excited to see how they explain that, because like I love part 2. I feel like part 2 kind of ignored the fact that Ellie is immune, and it had no reason to get into it. But I feel like when you think about the whole reason that they go on this journey in the first game, and the whole thing that Joel does that upsets Ellie, it all revolves around her immunity. And I feel it's like it's so important that I would love to dive into the why she is the only, so far that we know of in this world, immune person.
So Brett, I have a question. Do you think that they will dive into her immunity? With me and Jordan, kind of like me understanding where Jordan's line of thinking is at, I also could understand them not wanting to get into it and just letting it be mystery of the show. Do you think that they will explain why she is, or in some aspect when they show her mother?
Yeah, I don't know, because, and I haven't looked at a lot of behind the scenes stuff for the creation of the game, and so I don't know if Druckmann or anybody at Naughty Dog has said like anything official on the matter. And I can't believe I'm doing this because I think it's like a trash show, but with like The Walking Dead, I didn't even finish the first season, but I watched 4 episodes, and then somebody told me like, oh yeah, they never explain why like the cure doesn't work, or they don't even try to get one. And I'm like, why wouldn't you try to do that? The thing with this show is I feel like it's not like, I think if they try to explain that, it's going to take away from the power of like Joel's choice, Ellie's choice going forward in part 2.
It almost makes it more recreatable, right? Like, oh, well, we know why she's immune. Why don't they just try that again?
We just gotta get a pregnant woman infected.
It's literally like Schrodinger's cat. Like, you don't know if it was going to work or not, and that's like the beauty of his choice, because no matter where you land on that, this like topic of discussion, you can argue for or against it depending on if you think it was going to work or not. So I think it's almost like, or like Inception when he's spinning the top and you're like, oh, did it wobble or did it not? And it's like, well, that's not really the point if it did or not. It's the possibility. That's like what makes it so engaging.
So, and I think that's one of the reasons, now that you point that out, why this is one of my favorite stories, because movies like Inception with the spinning top, or things like Shutter Island, both Leonardo DiCaprio movies, but they leave the ending ambiguous for the viewer. I think I like those shows where, like, I mean, like super spoiler for this show, but like the idea of like us understanding that Joel is the bad guy of this show, but is he really, or was it like a moot point? Like, just like having that kind of ambiguity. I'm really, I don't know. I like that you kind of mentioned that because it makes my own personal taste make more sense in my head.
They could make that creative change to be like, yeah, it was going to work. And that I still don't think that would take away from the power of this story. But I think the ambiguity, does strengthen just like the possibilities of Joel's choice and Marlene's choice and on and on.
That leads me to an interesting question. When you guys were experiencing this story for the first time, did you feel like Ellie was the key to the cure, and that had Joel given her up in Salt Lake, that they would have a cure? Because to me personally, just to kind of give something to kind of jump off of, I thought it was like a 70-30% chance that like there's 70% chance it would work out, but there's still like a large 30% chance that she dies for nothing. And that's kind of like how I would justify it in my head of like, yeah, it could work, but there's like this really large margin where it's not going to pan out to anything.
I can't tell you how what thoughts I was going through the first time.
Did you think that like, oh, if we get her there, it's like a done deal, she is going to be the cure? Or did you think that there was like that it wasn't going to pan out?
I'll be honest, I don't remember what I thought, because I just remember knowing, hey, this is The Last of Us. Like, it's a must play. It's a fantastic story, but people always respected like not to spoil it for me in a way. And it's also this tough thing where there's no clear spoiler to The Last of Us. Like, it's not you say Snape kills Dumbledore and suddenly everything, those 3 words fucking explain so much. There is no quick spoiler like that. You have to explain, well, you see this person did that and then he takes her away, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, hey, let's just play and see where this goes. But in my memory, I kind of feel like I heard the doctor and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. No, I'm with Joel on this one.
What were your feelings, Brett? Did you think that it was going to work when you were initially playing it, or did you think that it was kind of up Shit's Creek?
Yeah, so my first time playing this game was in 2020, and I was not spoiled on it, so I still was going in completely fresh, and it was my belief that it was going to work, or that you had to try. You had to try. And so I was comfortable with letting Ellie go. And so when the character Joel makes a choice to go against it, that was like just like I was gripping my controller, man. Yeah, it was tough.
So my question to you two, how is the general audience going to feel about Slutty Daddy Pedro being kind of the villain of this whole show once everything is said and done? Because I think that the larger audience is going to have an easier time grasping it than incels in their parents' basement did in 2012 or whenever the game came out. But I do also think that it's going to be a hot button issue for the talking heads of YouTube to discuss on whether or not he is the bad guy. Because I think the beauty of this specific show is that he made the wrong choice, but every person who has loved somebody more than themselves understands why he made the choice.
So The Last of Us 2 really gets into the philosophy of everybody is the hero in their own story. But I personally, and I thought we were going to save this hot take for the finale, but here we are. I don't think Joel's a bad person for doing what he does.
Oh, I don't either. Like, that's the thing that I think is so ingenious about the show is he's the bad guy, but we all agree with him.
But I don't. I think
I didn't. He murdered like 20 people.
No. But here's the other thing. Not even looking at he takes Ellie away and potentially stops the cure. When people are like, well, think about what he did in the past. We cannot call Joel a good or bad person with our world because he's living in a world where the status quo is not the status quo.
Yeah. People are getting canceled in The Last of Us, right? Like where we are holding people to a standard and they can get canceled for things that they've said. Nobody's doing that shit out there in fucking Wyoming.
You think David?
Yeah.
Do you
Like,
think
in
David would eat me for my Lord Farquaad takes?
100%, dude. That dude is
Yes.
Mormon as fuck, and you know it. They gave
Oh,
such
they're-
dude,
like a fucking
they're
faith.
they're really leaning into they're a religious cult thing next week,
And we all know who out there in fucking Western Colorado, Utah area, motherfuckers.
yeah. But yeah, like I don't think it's fair to look at Joel with the morals of the world's not perfect where we are, but I'd say it's as much better than what we see in The Last of Us and stuff like that. And then with the decision he makes at the very end, we don't actually know if what the Fireflies do is going to work. We don't know if the Fireflies have the resources to make a lot of vaccines. We don't know if the Fireflies have the resources to distribute this, let alone if they try to distribute it, look at all the other faction groups around the country that can rob them and stop this. Or like, there is so much that you would need to do to realistically distribute this vaccine across the world to this world where we're not connected and shit like that, to the point that I actually almost think Fedra would be the only one to do it, just because they're the ones in charge. They have those clear ways to do it. We know Fedra is moving pills and batteries. We don't know what the Fireflies can and can't move.
So I get where you're coming from, but they also thought that distributing the coronavirus 19 vaccine was going to be impossible, and they somehow managed that, right? Like when that was all like starting out and the vaccine was $3,000 a pop, we were like, how the fuck are we going to do
But that's
this?
not what I say when I say distribute. Our roads were not bombed to oblivion because of COVID-19.
I do agree with you though that Fedra would have to be included into this implementation, but it'd be like almost at their detriment, because they know as soon as this is supplied to the people, they are no longer needed, right? Like it would almost be like the bullet that puts them to bed, right? Like them distributing this. But I do think that you are correct that they would have to be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we could wax poetic for a good long minute, but I feel like next episode we're going to have a lot to talk about, as well as the finale. So if you've liked what you have heard this week, please check out some of our other stuff. We have an Atomic Heart review going up really quickly after this goes up. I want to say that it's going to be up on Wednesday. We will be reviewing and discussing the Mandalorian show, just like we have been for The Last of Us. And also we have our weekly shared screens and media club podcasts that go up if you want to get more into the personalities and gaming side of things. Jordan, Brett, thank you for joining me. Where can people find you? Brett, rattle off your socials. I gave you a good warm-up last week. I hope you came prepared.
Yeah, I stream on twitch.tv/JimTasty. Obviously, I'm on shared screens on a ton of stuff. I will be on that Atomic Heart review. And yeah, follow me on Twitter @JimTasty Tweets for, all things Lord Farquaad, Jango Fett, and Count Dooku. Yeah.
And Jesse Eisenberg. Let me tell you what. Jordan, where can people find you? Anything fun you're working on that you want to tell the people about?
People can find me on Twitter @Jordan_Deeb, where currently I'm very emo about Pokemon, but I'll also talk about Sky High and Ben 10 all day long, and I'm always horny on main, so if you like that type of content, follow me. As for what I'm working on, by the time this uploads, maybe shortly after, our Pokemon reactions will be up, either already will be up by the time you're listening to this, or will be up very soon after, so give that a look.
So I believe that this goes up before. So if you are listening to this right now, I believe it will be
happening.
It will be time to jump over to our Shared Screens YouTube channel to check out Jordan's reaction of the Pokemon Reacts. Also, I know Jordan has some fucking special shit lined up with Pokemon going up on the Shared Screens channel, so please stay tuned to that. It is something that I am very excited about. All right, ladies and gentlemen and non-binary folk, thank you for joining us this week, and we hope to catch you later. Until next time, peace.